Hi everyone, welcome back. Before I get into the wrap up properly, I have a little bit of an announcement. Earlier this month I released a book of my own and I'd be really chuffed if you checked it out for me. It's a Christmas story. It's called Operation Sugarplum and it's a modern day retelling of the Nutcracker set in Australia. I've only released it as an ebook at the moment because it's quite short, but if I get off my butt and write the couple of sequels that I have in mind, when I've got all of those out, there'll be a combined paperback with all of them in it. If you're impatient though and you can't wait for that, there is a paperback of the anthology that this story was originally written for. It's called Christmas Australis, and you can also buy that from the same outlets that you would buy any of your books. I'll put all the information in the description, and it'd be fantastic if you bought it and read it and left a review. I'd be eternally grateful. So now that I'm done with my self-promo, onto the November wrap-up. So as you remember, I was doing the musical-a-thon for this month, and the prompts were all based on the musical Wicked. So I nearly finished this one. I was this close, but in the end I ended up being one book down. Even though I read about 8 books this month, only 4 of them counted for the readathon, which would have been really nice to actually get through one readathon in its entirety this year, but alas, 'twas not to be. So I thought I'll start with the books that I read for the readathon, and then I'll sort of double back and talk about a few of the other books I've read this month as well. So the first book that I read for the month and for the readathon was Breaking the Surface by Rebecca Langham, which is the sequel to Beneath the Surface, and those two books make up the Outsiders Project series. And I felt this book really built on the first one, and it was a stronger book, which was nice to see because these are Rebecca Langham's first 2 published novels, so it was nice to see that her skills were improving, and she was building on what she learned in the first book with the second book, and that was really great. There was some really good political situations in this one, and also some really good personal arcs with not just the main characters but the side characters as well. So there was one character who basically was the personification of the expression "the road to hell is paved with good intentions." He meant really well, and he got really screwed over and ended up on a path that he never should have ended up on. And that was actually sort of the story, the character arc that I enjoyed the most, even though he wasn't one of the main characters. But he kind of got his just desserts. Like, you felt bad for him, but you were like, well. So I recommend this series if you're into sci-fi. I'm not the biggest sci-fi reader, but it was the kind of sci-fi that I do like when I read it. So I don't really like sort of spaceships and space opera and lots of different alien races and lots of planets and that sort of thing. I'm much more into sci-fi set on Earth that sort of asks a what if question about humanity, and I really enjoy it when there is a political side to the sci-fi as well. So this ticked all my boxes, and I recommend both the books in the Outsiders Project series by Rebecca Langham. The second book I read, so I don't know if you remember, in my last video I said that for the childhood favourite prompt I was really stretching it because I was going to read The Court of Miracles by Kester Grant and justify it as a childhood favourite because it's a retelling of Les Mis, and the Les Mis musical is a childhood favourite. Then I was at a friend's house and I ended up borrowing her copy of Who Could That Be at This Hour, which is the first book in the All the Wrong Questions series by Lemony Snicket, which is kind of a fictional memoir written by Lemony Snicket. And so I was sort of the target audience age when A Series of Unfortunate Events was first coming out, and so reading a book by a childhood favourite author made much more sense for that prompt. So that was what I read. It's not as good as A Series of Unfortunate Events. I reread that whole series a couple of years ago, just before the Netflix series started, but I'm still intrigued enough by it that I kind of want to check out the next book, but it's not a massive priority for me, so I'll get it from the library sometime down the track. The friend I borrowed it from, she actually couldn't find her copy of the next book, so it's not at the top of my list, but it was interesting enough. It was a 3-star read. I liked it. After that, I spent probably a week trying to read Finnegan of the Rock by Melina Marchetta, which was my pick for a book with magic in it, which was the prompt. I can't remember which songs the prompts related to. I think magic was The Wizard and I, potentially. Anyway, I was supposed to be reading a book with magic, and I had nominated Finnegan of the Rock, but I spent a week trying to get into it, and I don't think I even read 100 pages in that week. And then on Saturday the 14th of November, I had a really busy, incredibly busy, tiring day. And the next day I just wanted to relax, and I wanted to read something really easy. And the book that I picked was A Pocketful of Eyes by Lili Wilkinson, who's an Australian young adult author. And this was just really fun. So basically the main character, B, is working, she has an internship at the Museum of Natural History in Melbourne, which I think is a fictional museum. I can't remember. But anyway, she has this internship, like, working in the taxidermy department, and she's learning about that. And then a few things happen. This new guy starts, and they sort of get off on the wrong foot straight away. And then the next day, her boss is found dead in the museum. And it's like, ooh, what was the new guy involved? B, who else was involved? It looks like maybe some of the curators and the more senior staff at the museum might have had something to do with it, or maybe they're just hiding other secrets. Who knows? And it was just a really good, fun read. I read it in one afternoon. It was really entertaining. There were a couple of bits. I don't work in museums as such, but I work in similar fields. I've usually spent most of my career working in libraries or archives, and so there were a few things where I sort of went, not quite sure that's quite right, and had to suspend my disbelief a little bit, but for the most part it was fine. The one thing that I did wonder about, it was one of those things where the main character B, I wasn't sure if she was supposed to be autistic or ADHD or something like that, because she definitely displayed a lot of those traits, but it was just never mentioned. And I was like, is she just hyper-focused coincidentally, or was that what the author was intending, but they weren't going to mention it in case they got it wrong, and then they could give themselves an out by saying like, what? No, it was nothing like that, if someone criticized it, which is kind of a lazy escape route. Like, if you're going to make a character neurodivergent or disabled or any other minority, own it, and then if you get it wrong, just accept that, or, try your best to not get it wrong, and then accept it if you do, and do better next time. Don't give yourself an easy way out of it. Anyway, apart from that, and that was sort of easy to put aside, and apart from that, this was really fun, and I recommend it if you're looking for a YA mystery that's not going to take up too much brain space. It took up no brain space, and I really enjoyed it. So, A Pocketful of Eyes. This isn't the first Lili Wilkinson I've read. I've also read another one of her contemporaries, which was called The Zigzag Effect, and I've actually got a review on this channel that I did last year when I read it. I think I liked this one better than The Zigzag Effect. And so I really am interested to read a few of her others now and see what happens. So by the time I finished that book, we were getting into the second half of the month, and I'm thinking, okay, I need to start thinking about my book club books. So I ended up reading Garth Nix's new book, The Left-Handed Booksellers of London. Ended up reading this as the book that features magic, and how I've left Melina Marchetta for another day. I'll get back to Finnegan at some point. This was the November read for Swell Publications. I'll put the link to their YouTube channel and their book club down below. I didn't love it, to be honest. It was light on characterization and heavy on the plot, and there was just so much going on all the time. And it was a bit exhausting, to be honest. And when I was feeling tired in real life, and then I sat down to read, to relax a bit, and the book was exhausting me, it was a lot. So, yeah, this one I only get 2 stars, which felt a bit mean and not quite reflective of how I felt about it. But if you think of like the Goodreads scale of rating, which is basically what I adhere to, 2 stars means it was okay, and 3 stars means I liked it. And to be honest, I was leaning more towards the it was okay. This is the second Garth Nix book I've read. I read Frog Kisser a few years ago, and I wasn't into that either, to be honest. So I'm wondering whether maybe this is just not an author that's for me. I do also have a copy of Angel Mage, which is his book that came out last year, which I haven't read yet. So I'll still read that one. And then after that, it may be a case of considering whether to worry about any more Garth Nix books. Maybe they're just not my thing. The remaining prompt that I still had to do for the musical-a-thon was the book with a morally grey character, and I had nominated The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch for that one, except, I don't know, I had it in my head that it was a YA book and that I'd get through it pretty quickly, and then I opened it and I saw the size of the font, and I sort of reread the blurb and went, no, this is an adult fantasy. This is going to be dense. It's not going to happen. This was last weekend, so I would have had to do it in a week. And I just went, nah. And then my next option was to try and get through 14 hours of audiobook in a week, because I'm currently listening to Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angelis, which there are definitely morally grey characters in that. The character of Jack, definitely morally grey. I thought that maybe DeMarco as well, but I think he's a bit too much of a gentleman. I think he's actually, he's a good guy, I think. As you can tell, I did not get through 14 hours of it in a week. I got through about 8. Surprise. The other book that I'm reading, which is for my other book club, is The Binding by Bridget Collins. And I think there are also a few characters in this that could be considered morally grey, but as you can see, I'm only a third of the way through it. The larger chunk there is the chunk I haven't read yet. So, again, not happening by the end of November, so that prompt has gone unfilled. Oh well. In terms of other Australian books that I've read this month for Oz Reads, I mentioned in my last video that I was reading the play Cosi by Nowra, so I read that pretty quickly. I gave it 3 stars. I've seen the movie before, and I remember feeling like, you know, it's one of those really like heartwarming, gets you in the feels kind of books. And I didn't quite get that feeling from reading the text, but that's not entirely surprising, because often the text of a play leaves a lot to be desired, and it's actually when you see it brought to life by performers that it's much more, that the feeling is really there, and that's what gives it the heart. So I'm still really looking forward to the production of Cosi that's coming up locally next year. I'm gonna put myself out there and audition for it, probably, and see how I go, but I'll definitely be going to see it even if I'm not in the cast. So that's something to look forward to, and I'll be able to compare how the text translates as a performance and whether I enjoy it more that way. Another book that I read early on in the month was a novella called Ripper by Angela Slatter. I saw Angela Slatter when she was one of the guests at Conflux 2017 in Canberra, and I wrote down a whole bunch of her titles at the time to remind myself to get onto them and read them. This wasn't one of them, but it's short and it was on sale, the ebook, so I ended up buying it a little while ago, and I really enjoyed it. So I really like reading Jack the Ripper stories anyway. And this one has this sort of, it's not really fantasy. I think it's probably closer to magical realism. And I really liked the idea that like all women are born with a certain amount of power that they can use, and like it manifests in like magical power, that is, and it manifests in different ways. And a lot of the women in Whitechapel use that power, you know, as fortune tellers, or that to tell fortunes, that sort of thing, to earn a little bit of income that doesn't require sleeping with strange men, basically. And because I read another Jack the Ripper book just in October, I was really familiar with the names of his victims and that sort of thing. And so when the main character's name is Catherine, or Kit, and she makes friends with Mary Jane Kelly, and they're making this plan to catch the Ripper, and I'm going, oh god, oh no, this is gonna end badly, because it ended really badly for Mary Jane Kelly. So it really worked really well having the historical figures playing that role in the book, and I recommend this one if you like your historical fantasy. It was really well done, and it's a short read. It was originally in an anthology, so yeah, check it out. So that's about it for my November reading. I did read a couple of other things, but they weren't for the readathon or for Ozreads, and they didn't really grab me, so at the risk of going on a rant and making this video even longer than it already is, I shall finish there. I will catch you in a week or two. I have a December TBR video that I plan to make. I'm trying to read mostly Christmassy books, or at least books that are, you know, kind of feel a bit, you know, magical, or like that fit in the season. So it'll be interesting to see how they pan out, and I'll have that up maybe in the next week, hopefully. So I'll see you then. Thanks for joining me today. See you next time.